How much of your customer feedback are you missing? Many companies rely on surveys, reviews, and customer complaints to understand what their customers think. But what if some of the most valuable insights aren't showing up in any of those places? What if they're happening in the everyday conversations customers and employees are having right there at the point of purchase? My guest today is Kevin Farley, Chief Customer Officer at InStore AI. His company helps retailers understand what customers and employees are really saying during their in-store interactions by using AI to analyze millions and millions of real-world conversations. In this conversation, we're talking about why neutral customer experiences may be even more dangerous than bad ones, how employee friction often becomes customer friction, and why the future of customer experience isn't about replacing human interaction with AI, it's about using AI to make those interactions even more meaningful. You'll also hear how leading retailers are uncovering hidden customer needs, coaching frontline teams more effectively and efficiently, and discovering insights that traditional surveys simply can't provide. I'm Brittany Hodak. My guest today is Kevin Farley. This is the Creating Superfans podcast. Let's go. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So I know you could do a much better job than I just did in the intro. Tell us a little bit in simple terms what InStore AI is and what you do.
Sure. So we help retailers of all kinds measure and analyze in-person interactions effectively. So we analyze millions of transactions between the cashier and the consumer. We use our large language models, analyze it for insights, specifically actionable insights. And instead of guessing why sales might be up or why a customer leaves in frustration, etc. We can tell you the insights from those conversations and really focus on the truth of the conversation and allow you as a retailer to educate your team, promote differently, and really focus in on what is the outcome of those interactions.
So what I was so fascinated by when I met you and your team and learned about your product is the fact that you're going from anecdote to data, and you're also able to zoom in and out simultaneously. So obviously you've got those micro interactions, that one conversation, that one moment, but then you can zoom all the way out and say this is what it looks like over 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. I'm so curious, what have you found to be common trends of everybody thinks it's X, but it's Y, or people anecdotally believe this, but when we look at the data, we actually find out? Like, where are those gaps in experiences that we just are so biased to that once we take a step back and look at, we're surprised what the data actually tells us?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So part of what we capture is the sentiment of the conversation, right? And so one of the things that we shared at our conference when we met each other is um, the high level of just neutral interactions, right? Especially in the convenience store segment, which we spend a lot of time in. It's amazing the amount of just transactions where it wouldn't take much to move from, if you use Net Promoter Score, from a neutral score to a positive score. The vast majority of the conversations are just neutral. But I think, I've been in the C-store space for the last 20 years. I've done a lot of store rides. I've done a lot of store visits, done a lot of executive rides. Everyone walks into the store thinking that that's how the store normally operates. And that's simply not true. And, I think when you look at it from a loyalty point of view, that interaction, everyone thinks that the cashier, who's typically a lower end from a pay scale perspective, is doing their best, and they are doing their best, but they're not doing it probably from what the headquarters thinks they're doing it. And so a lot of those conversations are simply transactions, and they could be moments of engagement, they could be moments of happiness, but the vast majority of them are not that way.
And one of the things that I've always found so fascinating, especially in convenience retail where turnover is high, demands are high, there's oftentimes only one or two employees in the store managing a lot that's happening simultaneously. And people say to me, well, it is what it is. There's sort of this like throw their hands up in the air of like, we're doing the best we can, or they look at it and they optimize for reducing friction or reducing negative rather than saying how can we reimagine this to be a delightful experience, to be something that leaves that customer a little bit better than when they walked in, and elevate it from a transaction standpoint. And I find that so interesting because in a lot of industries it's not like, oh, we're just resigned to the fact that like this is going to be neutral. And so I'm really curious, as somebody who's a veteran in this industry, do you find that attitude to be pervasive? Is that something that you find people say like, oh, it's sort of like, we're going to do the best we can. And if it doesn't work out, there's going to be a new cashier in 3 months anyway, versus saying, let's truly design an experience that we know we can optimize, that we know is repeatable, and give people the guardrails of what excellent looks like.
So the answer to your question is yes. I mean, it is pervasive across the industry. Not for everyone, and I'm not going to mention names here, but just in general, the C-store industry, because of that high turnover, tends to have a we're doing the best we can, and so the level of management just above the store, district zone, etc. They're doing their best to keep the lights on, keep the team engaged. And what we've been able to help them with is some of those interactions, those conversations that they're having with the consumer become these teaching moments, these coaching moments. And so we actually have a parking lot report. So as you drive up to a store, if you're the zone manager, et cetera, you can go back the last 10 days, 7 days, et cetera, and look at both positive and negative, let's call it, areas for improvement from that particular store, and get with the store manager, get those the store team, and actually use it for a celebration to say, hey, this particular shift and this particular day did this fantastic upsell of this promotion that we were running, or the loyalty asks, etc., and use it as a carrot, not a stick, in order to improve overall team morale. We actually have one retailer that has been with us for the last year or so and has seen their turnover go from approximately 120% down to 85 or so. So it's a big improvement when you use those insights for sure.
Absolutely. So you've analyzed so many millions of customer conversations at this point. What's an insight that consistently surprises leaders when they actually look at the data in aggregate?
I think the biggest one, there's lots, obviously, when you do millions of transactions, but I think the biggest thing that we can provide, and getting back to your friction point earlier, there's 2 points. One, everyone talks about frictionless, and I guess I'm here to say friction is important. You need friction. It's not a negative to have friction. The customer journey, whether it's from the loyalty app, especially in the C-store space, you got to have people come into the store. So they have to leave their car, typically at a fueling station, go inside and purchase a product. And so there is a journey, and the journey is inherently friction oriented. To your point, it needs to be a positive association with that friction. And so I think one of the things that's the most interesting is everyone has their transactional data, out of stocks, inventory, all that kind of stuff. The conversation insights are able to show you as a retailer what the consumer came in for, and either you don't carry it, which isn't going to be in your transaction information, or the consumer is really excited about this new product that they heard of online or whatever, and you don't have it in your store, etc. There's a bunch of information around what almost sold in your store that people just don't have access to for the most part.
Which is so fascinating that we're now at a point where, I think I said to you when I met you, wow, I feel like I'm living in the future hearing you talking about, because for anybody who's still a little bit unclear, what we're talking about is real-time audio capture of conversations happening at the checkout that's also then tied to the point of sale data. So we could say, Are people buying a Dr. Pepper because the frozen Dr. Pepper machine is broken, right? Or what percentage of people are coming in saying, I can't believe I can't believe you guys still don't have the ice machine fixed again. I'm only going to be buying bottled drinks until you fix the ice machine. Whatever it is, like you're catching things that before you would have either A, completely missed, or B, have been dependent on the human employee relaying. And then you've got anecdotal, not big picture data, which means sometimes you can optimize for solving a problem that's a problem to one person rather than the thing that goes unmissed to 60, 80, 120 people over the period of a day, a week, whatever, which is just really, really, really cool. And it's a great example of the application of high tech and high touch coming together
Hmm.
to create this. Like I said, it feels like we're living in the future. Like we have the ability to do all of this at mass and scale. Because you're right, you're able to say what are the things that are being asked for that we don't carry right now, or what are the common complaints around things that maybe you don't see on a store visit. Because when you're there, the food is going to be hot and fresh, or the machines are going to be clean for the drinks, or whatever the case may be of
Yeah.
any of those variables.
Yeah, one of the great examples, and again, I'll keep the retailers' names out of it, but they're using our platform, and a lot of the conversations that we track are for age-restricted products, tobacco, alcohol, etc., because those have to have conversations behind them. But regardless of that, we track and analyze all the different conversations. And so the one retailer was talking to me and said, "Hey, we're having in this particular segment of our company, we're having a decline in coffee sales." And so they went into the system. We have a search chat GPT like search bar, and just asked the system, what are customers saying about the coffee? And it turned out customers were complaining about the cold temperature of the coffee. That's never going to be picked up anywhere, right? Sure, the cashier hears it, but are they reporting that to anyone? Probably not. They're doing their job. They sold a cup of coffee or they didn't. It doesn't, I won't say it doesn't matter, but they kind of just go, okay, well, the coffee's cold. I did my best. I just made it, so it should be warm. I don't know. And so
Yeah.
they actually used the amount of people saying the coffee was cold to go and replace at those stores the equipment, and then saw the coffee sales return back to baseline. And so again, insights you're just not going to get from a transaction.
I love that. You're right, because there's so many insights that AI is going to be able to uncover that a survey just never could, either because of not knowing the right questions to ask or being limited in the number of things that you can reasonably ask in any standard non-AI survey design.
Right. Yeah.
So, if every retailer suddenly had access to all the same tools, what would still separate the winners from everyone else? What do you see that your top stores are doing, or novel implications of this knowledge that maybe not everybody is doing yet?
I think if everyone had access to all the same tools, and look, for the most part, they've had it until in-store AI showed up. It so if everyone implemented AI across the board, et cetera, it still comes down to culture at the end of the day, right? And so the winners are going to be the ones that are looking for the insights, not the outcomes, right? They're going to be looking for rapid coaching moments. They're going to look for empowerment of their team, because that elevates the cashiers, the team members' experience, which then elevates the consumer's experience. And there's retailers that are built on that foundation of it has to be the experience, right? It's all about the experience. And so AI, even the coffee example, gives you the ability to listen almost in real time to what the consumer is saying and take appropriate action. That example in the cold coffee could have been months before anyone knew about it. They'd sit there and look at the transaction data and say, I don't know, coffee's just not selling. And question mark, you just don't know, right? And so AI can point you to the exact moment a customer experience has succeeded or failed, and then you can drive the culture around that to create the change and the positive in-store experience for your consumer.
I love it. And, I know you talk a lot about the idea of human-centered retail and what this all means. And I want to flip it and talk about that employee experience a bit. You alluded to it before, that you've seen turnover go down, that you've seen coaching moments and opportunities go up. I want to talk about the human side of those employees who are now being told, hey, guess what? We're recording every single transaction, and this is actually a positive for you, not a negative for you. This is not a we're surveilling you because we don't trust you. This is because we're looking for opportunities to make things easier, better, etc. for you. So talk to me a little bit about, just like kind of the human side of that, of how your customers are getting their teams on board. And then some of the stories around how you've actually created really great employee wins for those cashiers and other frontline team members who are the ones participating in these transactions that are being recorded.
Yeah. I mean, it's human nature, right? To say, hey, wait a second, I'm going to be listened to. Now, what we do, of course, is all out in the public. So back rooms and any private areas are secure and safe. And if you need to have a private conversation as an employee, you're allowed to have that. So those spaces are still private. It's in part the system allows for also an extra measure of security. So most of the retailers have video surveillance of some form or another. And AI video is getting smarter, and a lot of theft detection or loss prevention can be built around that. Those two can be part of the conversation, right? And so there's a good example of you know, from a corporate perspective, let's talk first. Lottery is an interesting one because a customer can come up and say, "Hey, did I win?" And the cashier will take it and say, "Yeah, you won $50," and hand the customer $50, but it was actually a $100 winning ticket, and they're taking the money, right? And so there's a conversation there that a video can't capture, all that kind of stuff. But on the positive side, from the employee perspective, the best in class retailers that we're working with right now, I mean, they have competitions on a weekly, sometimes, or a monthly basis where they have gamified it effectively. Say, hey, we're going to promote insert name of product here, and the stores that mention that product the most are going to win a prize. The prize doesn't have to be fantastic or whatever, right? But the whole point is to celebrate, hey, we're doing our best. We're creating the environment based on what we're hearing, and then coaching around on how to upsell the customer when they walk in. And so it can be really amazing to see the empowerment of the employee saying, hey, I made a difference to my company, right? And then they're getting the coaching. Like the top tier employees, they're going to be the top tier. The bottom tier, honestly, the bottom tier is going to be the bottom tier. It's the middle tier that you can really make an impact and say, hey, we have this coaching for you. The store down the street does it this way, this way, this way. We've seen great results. Let's try it. And they grab onto it and they embrace it, and they see the results, and they get awards and rewards for it, and whatnot. And that's in part why we see the turnover rate decreases, because now they feel like they're being listened to,
Yeah.
literally, but also their 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 needs and their wants are being heard from corporate, which is not always the case in retail.
Well, the thing I also find really fascinating about this from an employee experience standpoint is it's bringing kind of irrefutable data, right? I mean, I'm sure some people would try to argue with it, but I think historically it's been, oh, Jamie's a high performer. Sorry, Becky, you're just not a Jamie. And that leaves room for bias
Yeah.
from the manager, the leadership team, that can create negative feelings of, competition, of, oh, it's a personality thing. You just don't like me as much, or it's unfair. You're saying that she signs up more people for the rewards program, or he has higher ring per sale, or but that's tied to time of day or whatever. It's like being able to say we're tracking all of this data and we're also tracking sentiment.
Yeah.
I think creates a level of almost removing the human emotion side from a manager to say, based on the data, this team member has people who are positive X% of the time, and this other person, the interactions are only positive Y% of the time. Or drop in any measurable thing that you want. How many people are you signing up for the rewards program? How many people are you know celebrating something based on a cue that you get based on the clothing for the team that they're following, or the last day of school shirt, whatever it is. And so I think that's also a really cool component of it. Yes, it's helping the frontline team, but I think it's also helping the leadership team to be able to say, this gives you an unbiased look that you can share with your team and say, this is the scoreboard. These are the rules. This is what we're measuring. And it makes things inherently more fair.
Totally agree. And your comment about the shifts is 100% accurate, right? Obviously, a lot of graveyard shifts have fewer transactions, et cetera. It doesn't mean they're the worst employees. It means their lifestyle requires them to work the graveyard shift, right? And they could be the best employee you have in the store. The number of transactions likely is going to be lower, but it doesn't mean the basket size is lower, and it certainly doesn't mean that the consumer experience is less just because it happens to be 2 o'clock in the morning. You could be literally your best employee, and you wouldn't necessarily know it just based on transactional data.
Right. Well, and I would imagine in many convenience retail environments, there are probably fewer store visits happening from the leadership team and the corporate team with those overnight employees. And so I would argue what might happen is those people who are tired of working that shift, who've said, can I get, first shift, second shift, and are being told no, you might be losing a really great person who
Yep.
was willing to stick it out for a little while, but you haven't identified how good they are because you're looking, saying like, oh, sales are flat from midnight to 6 a.m. or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
100%. Yeah.
So if you can give every single CEO one dashboard metric related to customer experience that they should really be obsessing over, what would that metric be and why?
So I think overall sentiment based on customer interactions, we have a dashboard already in store, and so effectively looking at customer friction, and I said friction is going to exist, but figuring out the percentage of that friction, those interactions that are positive versus neutral versus negative, and really leaning in on when a customer expresses frustration or disappointment or unmet needs. Why didn't the customer buy a product is something you just don't get from transactions, right? From transactional data. And so from just the one metric, I would say, whether you want to call it unmet needs or consumer demands that have, again, not been met, right? And so that negative interaction because the consumer walked in. Again, convenience stores are very interesting. Consumer walks in, usually it's purposeful, but they're not browsing typically, right? They're looking for something. The trip has a purpose behind it. And when they get to the counter, it's a very unique position to be in. They have their wallets open, they're ready to purchase, and the cashier has complete control over where that interaction goes next, right? You can look at the person and say, looks like you're having a party, chips and salsa are on sale, do you want to get some, right? That's basket size increase and all that kind of stuff. So just being able to measure the percentage of customer positive interactions or unmet needs, vice versa, I think is the one metric I would give to any CEO.
I love it. So I know you've been anonymizing some of the stories, some of the things that you've been talking about, but I want to give you the chance to brag. Who is a customer that is doing a really fantastic job or has set themselves apart in a way that you've seen really make a difference?
We have a great partnership with Murphy USA.
Okay.
We have a great partnership with Atlantis. These people have taken a lot of what I've said and embodied it in their teams to um, reward and award their teams. And again, I'll stop short of saying who does what, but Murphy USA is a really big retailer nationally. And Atlantis is up in the Northeast. But just in general, I think when they look at the insights that the consumer is providing them, and the interactions with the cashiers. It's just great to see the headquarters of these organizations embrace it for positive change across their entire company.
I love that. Making the cultural change based on the data that they're collecting.
Yeah.
I also think it's really fascinating, like you said, the sort of age gated products of that intel, because I never thought about how many times a day does a frontline employee have to shut down a teenager with a fake ID, or how many times a day, is somebody answering some sort of question about a tobacco product or a lottery product or something else, and maybe they don't know, right? Like, people identifying gaps of when somebody says, I don't know, what's the difference between Powerball and Mega Millions,
Sure.
or hey, you stopped selling the scratch off that I was getting every day. Did that game end, or how long? Just it's probably, I would imagine that the things that you uncover via those conversations are things that you never would have even thought to track or ask about in many situations.
I think across the board, your lottery example is a great one. Just in general, the CPG conversations and the insights. Again, the customer is at the point of purchase, wallet open, ready to make a purchase. You can take a tobacco product, and I'm not a tobacco user, but they're going to buy X, and the cashier could, at that very point, say, "Hey, I used to use that, but this other one over here is 10 times better from a flavor perspective," or whatever. And that consumer, sometimes they're hardcore, they want the product that they want, and that's why they came in, and so that's the one they're going to buy. But they are often willing to change, or try, and that's a great insight to say what almost got bought and what ended up being purchased, right? And so that applies for tobacco, for alcohol, but for any product. You bring this, to your point earlier, you bring a Dr. Pepper up to the counter, and the cashier can say, "Yeah, this you see, you're a Dr. Pepper fan. We're excited to get the new flavor in next week," or what. There's just these moments of engagement, that CPGs across the board are interested in gaining access to as well.
Okay, so I watched a video. My oldest son actually showed it to me. So I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. Of course, they love Mr. Beast because they're kids and everybody does. And of course, they love everything he puts his name on. So the Feastables chocolate and the beef jerky and like all the things. And my son showed me a video of Mr. Beast on, I think he was on a podcast, and he was talking about how he was so frustrated because he couldn't figure out why so many of his chocolate bars were broken in stores. And he was like, "We know they're not broken when they're shipped, and people are complaining. Like, people are posting all these videos of like, the bars are broken, the bars are broken." And he was trying to work with the retailers to say, "We don't understand what's happening. Like, what is it about the display? Is it something about the way we're shipping things? What are we doing?" And so he actually activated his, legion of fans to go in and record, and in some cases, like, set up hidden GoPros behind like bags of chips and stuff,
Wow.
pointed at the display. And he said what we saw was, because of the way that we had them in these boxes that we thought were really cool, that were like front loading boxes, a mom or a kid would like pick one up and put it back. And when they picked up one bar, the display with the other 8 bars would fall on the floor, and they would, pick it back up and place it. And he said we never would have known that if we didn't have those cameras. And I was thinking about the fact that from a CPG standpoint, there are just some data points that you are not going to get unless you're in those retail environments. And to the best of your quality control, to the best of your, we tested this a million times, until you can replicate something in 50, 100, 1,000 locations, you're just not going to catch everything. And to me, that's what I find so fascinating about InStore AI and the product that you're getting. And obviously, I know we're talking about audio versus video, but you're capturing those things of, for instance, if your example before, "Oh, I used to use that tobacco product. Now I like this one because the flavor is better," or whatever. That information is, in my mind, even more valuable to hear the employees say that, because then I wonder, how many other times has the employee said this, and how many other employees are saying this, and is this now a product issue? Like, we thought this was a
Yeah.
a, a price point issue that we needed to like out promote our partners or drop the price or whatever. But in reality, this is a product thing that we're not hearing about because we had never asked before, or we had never created an environment where we could capture it, as you said, when somebody has their wallet out. So I find all of this incredibly fascinating, both from a brand product standpoint, also from a retailer standpoint. And I'm curious, is you've had a very long career, you've done so many very cool things. I want to know what brought you to InStore AI, what made you say, like, at this point in your career, okay, I've got to do this. But I also want to know, like, what is going to be different in 5 years? Things are changing so quickly. The insights, the information we have are so much better. Some of those things, like Mr. Beast saying, it was frustrating that we thought we delivered like the best packaging, the coolest in-store experience, and then there was like a very obvious like point of sale failure in part of it. So I want to know, like, how does the near future, let's say 5 years from now, look different because of the better decision making we'll be able to do, because we're no longer relying on anecdotes or assumptions, but instead we have true proven data in the moments that matter the most.
First question. So why did I join InStore? So I've been with InStore now three and a half months. 20 years in the C-store business, and I had a whole separate career before that, oil and gas pipeline control systems. But so very different. But you know, this platform is a game changer for a retailer, and not just for retailers from a headquarter perspective, but from an employee perspective. And also from a CPG perspective. So, sit on a few boards. The National Association of Convenience Store Supplier Board is one of them. And everyone's looking for that consumer sentiment. So I'm going to have to go check. I won't do it right now, but I would argue from an audio perspective, we probably knew about Mr. Beast and the product breaking before the video being published on YouTube and on the various social media channels, because that would have been a conversation happening with the cashier in real time, right? And so you multiply that by the millions of interactions we have, the insights that you can gain, again, as a retailer or a CPG, are just phenomenal. And, I spent 17 years helping retailers, specifically in convenience, with their marketing programs and the customer journey and mapping it out and all that kind of stuff. And there's this point right at the counter, which is never able to be mapped out, right? It's that conversation with the cashier, and you get a happy, engaged cashier, and the basket size goes up. It's not rocket science, but it is science at the end of the day, right? It is measurable. It is something that you can put data behind. And I think, getting to your second question, as far as retailers 5 years from now, look, the best retailers in convenience, in my opinion, have a lot of data, and they make a lot of decisions based on that. From an operations perspective, however, they still do a lot of stuff on gut feel, right? To your point earlier, Sally is not as good of a cashier as Brenda, but what is that based on? It is based on the shift they run, or, that kind of thing. And I just think once you have this insight, you now know who to coach, not just what's low on stock, because look, there's inventory management systems that'll help you. This particular SKU is going to sell out tomorrow, so you should order some and all that kind of stuff. You're going to know what the consumers are walking in the store asking for and walking out because you don't have it. So trends are coming fast and furious, and that part's not going to stop, right? The Mr. Beast and all the other influencers out there, how fast are your consumers walking in asking for the product? And it's not a matter of out of stock. It's a matter of you don't have it. You don't have access to it. And so how can you generate additional revenue inside of your store based on new products that you just simply don't have right now?
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned the trends because you're right. And you think about some of the things of like something that's like a flash in the pan, like a Labubu, right? Like that had a moment, right? Versus like a Pokemon cards
Yeah.
that is like a steady climb and seems to be not slowing down at all anytime soon. And being able to not rely on anecdotes but instead data earlier helps retailers make the decision to figure out what they need to stock, how quickly they can stock it, and then when they need to pull back, right? Because if you're only relying on the fact that, like, oh, sales seem to be steady, you could find yourself stuck with a whole bunch of inventory. Like, I guarantee there are a lot of retailers right now with millions and millions of dollars of Labubu stock that they're, probably gonna keep in their stores for a while.
Yeah. Until the fad comes back again. Yes.
Right, well, exactly, right, but yeah, what does that look like? How long is that? So,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's talk about trends. I wanna know, what is a customer experience trend that in your opinion, or based on the data that you have because you're analyzing it, that you believe to be overhyped?
I think, again, getting back to what I said earlier, just the concept of frictionless. So trying to replace that human interaction completely with automation. I think that's a little overhyped right now. I don't think removing all friction from the customer journey is what you want to do, because especially in the convenience store industry, if you do it properly, the friction, if you will, done from a positive intent, actually helps increase overall basket size. So the current basket size per the conference that you and I met at is about $7 and let's call it 40 cents across the nation. And so if you want to get that ring up to $9, $10, you're gonna have to have an interaction, right? Because that's the status quo, right? And so putting in more automation and whatnot is not going to get that consumer to try the new flavor, to try something different. That's a conversation. That's almost a salesperson, right? I mean, convenience stores back in the day were the local store where you went to get your milk and all that kind of stuff. And so I think the better retailers are not going to try to automate the front line, but they're going to empower the front line to impact the average consumer when they walk in the door.
I love that, and, I feel like that nuance is so important across everything. I often say consumers don't love AI or hate AI. They love easy and they hate hard. They love fast, they hate slow, just like they always have since the beginning of time.
Right.
They love to feel like a promise has been kept. They hate to feel like a promise has been broken. They love to feel like somebody's being honest and transparent. They hate to feel like they don't have the honesty or the transparency. And so AI is just an accelerant to everything that has always been true about human nature, and I think will be true about human nature for as long as certainly both of us are on the planet, and probably for many millennia after that.
I think the most amazing thing about the in-store platform and the AI part of it all is it does exactly what you're saying. It gives you this insight, like getting back to the cold coffee. That was going to take forever to figure out, right? But you can go in and I'd love to show you the dashboard at some point, but you can go in and just query. Just it's a large language model, so you can go in there and you're basically saying, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, whatever your favorite AI tool is, your whole stores, you got 1,000 stores, you can ask the store a question and the store is going to tell you the answer. It's phenomenal. It's just fantastically interesting. You can ask it whatever you want and it knows the answer because there's conversations going on all the time, right? And so you can say, what are my cashiers struggling with the most? And you can get insights about they don't know how to run the point of sale system. They're never going to tell you that ever because it makes them look silly or uneducated or they don't care or whatever. But you can say, okay, I understand that maybe this point of sale system, it's new, we need to upgrade it or whatever the story is. But it just being able to take that step back and ask the stores, if your stores could talk, what would they tell you? That's what we have.
It's funny. I was at an arcade last night with my husband and our boys, and we love this arcade. And they recently went from like tokens and tickets to everything's on cards. And so we have my boys, we go to the arcade a lot. And so we had all of these certificates because it's like, you'd win 2,000 tickets and you'd redeem 400 of them. And then they'd like write you a certificate to take the other 1,600 home. And then, like save it up over time for the bigger prizes. So I had brought them all in so that we could add them to the card. And this transition happened like, I don't know, probably 2 months ago. Like we've been in there a bunch of times with the cards. So, the boys have the cards with their tokens on them, with their tickets on them. But we just had never like gathered up the certificates from, like my car and my husband's car and the, go bag, like all the various places they were from all these visits. So we went in last night and we had probably 12 certificates for like, 25,000 tickets. The girl working at the counter was like, oh, I don't know how to do this. And so she called somebody else. And there's like a sign that says, like, we'll redeem your whatever. So she called somebody else in and he was like, oh, yeah, I know how to do this. And he was like, oh, I hate this system. I can't do it. And then a third person came and did it. And I just think about if in that instance there was an InStore AI application, like how many times have multiple people had to stop what they were doing from different parts of this arcade's attached to a bowling alley. So it was like
Sure.
employees coming from other parts to have to try to do this. And then when somebody figured it out, he was like, oh, right, I always forget that's there. And so then I'm like, okay, is that like a UI problem? Is that the button that was 7 screens hidden had to get to it? So it's so fascinating to think about, yes, all of the retail and CPG product applications, but also, as you just said, how do we design a better experience because all of a sudden our stores can talk?
Yeah.
And it's the things that an employee might not have thought to complain about or say because they hadn't considered the fact that somebody could just come redesign the workflow or move a button or add, something to a system. And so I think it is so incredibly cool. Um, what do you think is one customer experience trend that is underhyped, that doesn't get enough attention, that not enough people are obsessing over in a way that you would argue they should?
I want to flip the question a little bit. So I think
What?
underhyped the most. So everyone talks about customer experience, customer friction, and I've already made my point that friction is important and all that stuff. But just the story you just shared is exactly the other thing that gets underhyped or has been underhyped is the employee friction.
Mm,
And the ability to have insights around the employee friction, which ultimately ends up in the customer's lap, right? So if you're in
yeah,
a
my kids are like, "Give me the card, I wanna play the games," and I'm
right,
like, "Hold
right,
on, guys, hold
right,
on." And they're like,
exactly,
"We don't care about our tickets, we just wanna go play the game."
right. So that was stress, that was friction, right? And so, but the employees' friction, which we can map, is fascinating for just general operational education, insights, etc., just to be able to provide back to again the district zone leaders, store managers, etc., the different ways that employees might be struggling, or again, a tobacco consumer walks up and says, "Hey, I want a pack of insert name here." And they turn around to the tobacco back bar and they go, "I can never find that. What else you got?" Right? And it's just this weird experience because like the employee has friction, and so the employee has no choice but to share their friction with the consumer. And I think that
Yeah,
is something that people don't talk enough about.
I love it. Alright, Kevin, if you could wave a magic wand and have every business start doing one thing tomorrow that many are not doing right now, what would that be and why?
Listen to your stores. If your stores could talk, what would your stores say? And look, like I said, I've been on 2 decades worth of store rides, and everyone has a story. And you go there with the executive team, and you're announced, and you get there, and you get the best shift, and all that kind of stuff. You can do secret shopper, and that's fine. It's a moment in time. It's the collective insight overall that I think tools like InStore AI you are uniquely positioned to provide retailer and CPG um, for what the ultimate consumer journey is, which is that moment, at point of purchase, and what the consumer's really wanting, not what they've actually bought, but what they're really wanting is fascinating from that perspective.
All right, Kevin, something that I love to ask every guest on this show. What is something you're a super fan of that more people should know about?
Your show and your book, most people need to read this.
Oh,
Um,
you are very kind.
I've
Thank you
been,
for that.
I have enjoyed the book greatly. I enjoyed your talk. So hopefully we cross paths. The funny thing is, from a retailer perspective, look, my favorite retailer is going to be Funny because you only go there once a year probably if you go at all. Warby Parker, which is an eyeglass.
I love Warby Parker. I tell you what, I was in a Warby Parker store yesterday with my son because one of the things that I love about Warby, and then I'll let you share your story too. Obviously, they have this. I'm going to call it magic heating machine because I don't know how the technology works, so we're going to just call it magic. That where they can like heat and reshape your glasses.
Right,
So the plastic glasses, obviously, over time tend to like stretch a little bit. You can walk into any Warby and they will reshape and refit and reform them for you. And my oldest son wears glasses and he's constantly, like getting them kicked off in a soccer game or like wrestling with little brother and they fall off. And we go in there so often and they just like, it's like better than new. And then of course, every time we're in there, he's like, oh my gosh, I like this pair.
right.
I should try on this. I should get this.
I
So
mean, they've
it's
taken the whole model was online only, right? And so they send you five try on at home, all that kind of stuff, and you pick your pair and send them back and all kinds of stuff into brick and mortar. And to your point, like normally I go get my eyes checked. I'm getting older, so I get them checked every year, etc. And I go get new lenses and all that kind of stuff. I'll go into a Warby just because like I happen to be walking down the street and go, hey, I should go check it out. And everyone's like, why would you go in there? I'm like, this is a cool experience. Like I want to try in new frames and all that. So for someone to take something that's as utilitarian as a pair of eyeglasses and make me want to go in, the team's highly educated about their product and all that kind of stuff. And to your point, the service level is impeccable. And so I don't know. To me, that's one of the better retailers out there right now.
I love this example. That is a category that, was very disrupted because if you think about how much it used to suck to shop for glasses, because there were huge markups, there was very limited stylistic categories available to you. It was very confusing because you're like, wait, I thought insurance was covering this. What do you mean I've got to pay an extra $280? What do you mean it's going to be different for the and so the concept of like one price,
Yeah,
we stand behind our products.
right,
We're going to make this feel delightful. You're right. So that idea of curated, how can we make this an experience that people look forward to having
right.
and want to come do more than one time a year?
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, your platform captures endless customer conversations. I want to know, I know you've only been there 3 months, but if those conversations, if listening to that data has taught you one universal truth, not just about customers or employees, but about people, what is it? What lesson have you learned or do you continue to see that holds true based on all of these captured conversations?
I think people want to feel acknowledged, right? And so if you're a consumer and you walk in and say, hey, do you have insert name of product here? And the answer is no, there's a level of frustration. And that customer may not never come back to that store. You don't know. Um, Everyone's got a story. They got, their days happening. They walk into a convenience store. They bring their whole day with them. The cashier's got their day going, and so there's this moment of collision, call it friction, if you will. But I think the employee wants to know that they did a good job. The consumer wants to know that the product that they're looking for is available and can be done in a fairly timely manner. It's convenience, after all. Um, but just in general, if you look at the data and look at the retailers that use the data from an empowerment and reward perspective, people just in general want to feel acknowledged, heard, really, right? And so I think the power of the conversation, again, if your stores could talk, what would they say? And ultimately, from a headquarters perspective, would you want to hear it? And um, I think it's been fascinating to watch and help educate retailers across the country with the idea that people really want to feel acknowledged.
Well, something that you said before that I know we agree on very strongly is the fact that there is such danger in neutral interactions. And that when somebody doesn't feel seen, doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel acknowledged, it doesn't necessarily register as a negative in that moment because they're not complaining. They're just silently going away.
Right.
They're saying, well, I tried to voice a concern. I tried to ask a question. I tried to, double tap. It was not met in the way that I expected it to be met by the person who is essentially the brand, right? Whoever that is, whether that's your cashier, whether that's another, frontline employee, whether that does happen to be the manager, like whoever it is, like I felt like they did not care.
Yeah.
So I walk away,
Right.
maybe for the final time.
Right.
And those neutral touch points, those missed opportunities are the things that destroy brands
Right.
because you may not hear about it, but everybody they know might.
Right. Going back to the example with the retailer had a cold coffee issue. The better stores figured out a way to have that conversation. They didn't change the temperature of the coffee right away, but they changed the interaction so that the consumer felt heard and came back again, right? It's not just necessarily giving them the free cup of coffee or whatever, but it's like, okay, I hear, like, there's a way to approach that conversation as opposed to, yeah, I'll give it to you free, sorry, and they walk out. And you can say that, that's fine, but that consumer, again, coffee people are every bit as loyal as tobacco consumers, etc. I mean, the people who like their coffee, and they like their coffee at the spot that they're going, especially in the convenience store industry, because it's usually on the way to work or home or to the school for the kids or whatever. There's a path that they're typically driving along, and so being part of that ecosystem from an in-store AI perspective has been a great adventure. I'm enjoying it greatly.
Well, I've been enjoying it from the outside. I am a super fan of everything you guys are doing. I find it endlessly fascinating. I cannot wait to watch and learn and see more. For everybody listening out there, Kevin, I mean, I could talk to you for days and days about this, but I know I've got to release you back into in-store AI. Where can people find out more about this incredible platform and tool?
Yeah, on the web is always the best. InStore.ai. We have the whole dashboard and the insights all ready to go on our website. So that's probably the best spot.
Amazing. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. It's great.